story begins with Jim Hanson, a widowed former U.S. Marine Corps scout sniper who lives alone on a small ranch near the Arizona-Mexico border with his dog, Jackson. The ranch is under financial strain, and Jim is behind on payments, so he patrols his land, inspects fences, reports illegal crossings to the U.S. Border Patrol, while trying to keep a low profile. His stepdaughter, Sarah Pennington, works for the Border Patrol, and they maintain a distant but functional relationship, occasionally exchanging radio updates. Meanwhile, in Mexico, Rosa Cueto and her young son Miguel are on the run because Rosa's brother stole money from the cartel, and they've decided to pay him back. They eventually get to the border fence and are sighted by the cartel, who advance towards them immediately. Luckily for them, Miguel finds a hole in the fence that they both use to cross to the other side, but Rosa gets injured. When they cross, they run into Jim on one of his solo patrols, who stops them immediately. Despite Rosa's pleas and offer to pay him handsomely to help them escape, Jim ends up calling Border Patrol and reporting the incident. Shortly after, the cartel arrives and demands that he hand over the woman and the boy. But Jim, sensing that something is obviously wrong, refuses, stating that they now belong to the Border Patrol. Realizing how adamant Jim is in handing them over, Mauricio, the cartel boss, loses his temper and orders his men to attack. While his men prepare their guns, Jim, old but quick, immediately readies his rifle and shoots some of them down. He and the immigrants then take cover behind his truck, while the rest of the men shoot at them. They then shortly get into the truck and drive away. While they drive, Mauricio climbs onto the car, but Jim sends him flying like a toddler who touched a live wire. After securing their escape, Jim finds out that Rosa had been shot during the scuffle and is currently losing a lot of blood. He carries her out and lays her on the ground while they wait for the Border Patrol. Unfortunately, Rosa, who has lost too much blood, realizes she cannot make it. She says goodbye to her son and hands Jim an address, making him promise to take Miguel there as she passes away. Mama! When the Border Patrol arrives, they retrieve Rosa's body and decide that Miguel will be put in foster care. They also request that Jim stop by the station the following day to give his statement. The following morning, Jim wakes up in his car, and shortly after he discovers the stash of cash Rosa left in his car, he sees the cartel watching the station closely from across the border. Thinking fast, he immediately heads in and sneaks out Miguel, who is pretty much still upset at him for his mother's passing. Leading Miguel into his car, he drives him to his house, where he heads in to grab a bunch of supplies. By the time he gets back to the car, he finds out that Miguel, who was meant to wait there for him, has run away, so he sets out after him. Shortly after, he finds Miguel wandering around on his own, takes him back to his car, and drives away. While driving, he tries to hold a conversation with the boy, but he refuses to speak to him. Meanwhile, not too long after they leave, the cartel, who have illegally crossed the border, arrive at Jim's house. When they do not meet him there, they burn down the building and set out to look for them. Jim takes Miguel to a restaurant where he buys him some food, and the lad, who has been starving, drops his guard and digs in. Later, Jim drives to a gas station where he refuels his car and purchases a map for the long road. Continuing with the journey, Miguel suddenly expresses his frustration to Jim, who sincerely apologizes for his mother's passing. A little while on the road, Jim's car engine, which had been shot during the earlier scuffle with the cartel, suddenly starts acting up, so he is forced to take it to a mechanic. The cartel traces Jim's credit card transaction to the gas station and arrives there shortly after he leaves. On getting there, they interrogate the staff for information on Jim, but she refuses to cooperate, so they grant her an early ticket to the great beyond. Through the security cameras, the gang can deduce where Jim is headed, so they set out after then again. At the mechanics, Jim is told that the engine is badly damaged and would take a couple of days to be fixed. When Jim explains that he doesn't have the time, the mechanic compromises that he could do some minor patches that would at least get it to start again, learning that even with the minor patches, the car would not be ready until the following morning. Jim and Miguel are forced to spend the night. They head to a restaurant where they chat for a bit over food. Jim is empathetic to learn that Miguel's mother was widowed shortly before he was born, making him practically an orphan, since he has just lost her as well. After a short while, Miguel excuses himself to use the bathroom, and when he returns, he's shocked not to see Jim in the restaurant again. Panicked, he storms out in search of him and finds him asleep in the car. Miguel then takes Jackson, the dog, on a walk through the area. The following morning, when Jim wakes up and can't find either Miguel or Jackson, he gets scared, but Miguel shortly returns with the dog and a couple of snacks, which he purchased for breakfast. Relieved, Jim thanks him for his effort, but goes out to get some real food, as he's too old to be eating snacks. He uses his credit card, which ends up alerting the cartel, who are still trying to track him. Continuing their journey to Chicago, Miguel asks Jim if he thinks he'll like the lifestyle in Chicago. Jim replies that he'll definitely like it because the entire city is packed with snow bunnies and thick Latino baddies. Miguel then nods in agreement. During their journey, their vehicle gets stopped by a police officer who requests the car documents. Although Jim complies with all his demands, something seems fishy as the officer keeps trying to confiscate some of his belongings. After confiscating his licensed guns, the officer makes him sit in his car while he pretends to interrogate Miguel. From the officer's car, Jim overhears the officer through the car speaker, reporting to someone that he has captured him. Jim, realizing that the officer is involved with the cartel, decides to play along, waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. When the officer lets him out of the car, Jim attacks him and knocks him unconscious. He then gets into his car and drives to a safe distance in the woods. From there, he and Miguel watch the cartel arrive and unalive the cop. They then find Jim's map on the floor and retrieve it just in case, as they take their leave. Later, Jim heads to a gun shop to purchase some new rifles, since he wasn't able to retrieve the ones the officer confiscated. When he arrives and selects the gun he'll be purchasing, the shop owner tells him he's going to have to run a background check on him before selling him any gun, and since his computer is down, it'll take till the next morning before he's done. With the cartel closing in, Jim knows he's running out of time, so he pleads with the man, who later agrees to report the guns stolen if they end up in the wrong hands after the sale. That afternoon, Jim contacts Sarah, who fills him in about the cartel. According to her, apart from the whole issue with the stolen money, one of the men Jim unalived at the border happened to be Mauricio's brother, and now he wants revenge. She tries to convince him to ditch the whole traveling mission and just take cover somewhere safe, but Jim tells her he's too far gone to back down. Besides, he had promised Miguel's mother that he would take him to Chicago. She tells him that, even if he intends to do that, he'll not be able to complete the mission without support. And Jim starts to reconsider. She then makes him promise to stay safe, while she does what she can to help. Later that day, Jim takes Miguel shopping for some new fits, to make him look presentable for the baddies when they arrive. While they shop, he notices Miguel staring at some gummy bears, so he buys them for him. Eventually, it gets dark, so Jim parks his truck out of sight and books them a room in a motel to spend the night. Shortly after Miguel goes to sleep, Jackson whines repeatedly, so Jim opens the door for him to go outside. He then sees the cartel in the building across, threatening the residents for his address. Jim quickly calls for Jackson to return, but the dog has already gone too far. He then quickly reports a burglary case to the police and wakes Miguel up, sneaking him out of the building through the back window. By the time the cartel locates the apartment, Jim and Miguel have retreated deep into the woods. The men try to search for them, but they hear the sound of sirens approaching from a distance, so they retreat immediately. Jim instructs Miguel to head straight to the truck, while he sets out to search for Jackson. Unfortunately, he witnesses Jackson try to attack the gangsters and get gunned down just before they leave. Sarah arrives with the police that night to survey the area and gets more worried that her old man might eventually run out of luck someday. The following morning, while they bury Jackson's body, Jim snaps and tells Miguel he'll be taking him back. Miguel then gets upset and runs away again. Later, when Jim finds him, he takes him to a church where the priest helps him hold a funeral ceremony for his deceased mother. After the ceremony, Jim contacts Sarah again and updates her about the recent events. She tries to convince him to make Miguel apply for asylum in the States to guarantee security, but Jim is against the idea, as he doesn't know who to trust anymore. He insists that he has made up his mind and will be proceeding with his mission to take Miguel to Chicago. Meanwhile, according to the markings on the map, Mauricio figures out that Chicago is Jim's destination, so he contacts some of his men in the area to keep an eye out for their truck. Before continuing with their journey, Jim teaches Miguel all he needs to know about handling a gun. Later that night, while they both sit by a fireside, Jim hands Miguel the bag of money, but he rejects it, claiming it's cartel money. They then come up with the silliest idea and take turns tossing the notes into the fire before burning them down completely. The following morning, when they take off, they get spotted by the men Mauricio had ordered to look out for them, and in no time, the cartel catches up to them. While the cartel tries to collide with their truck head-on, Jim uses his drifting skills to evade the car and drive away at full speed. Suddenly, the car engine starts to act up again, so he's forced to re-strategize. He parks the car and waits in a sniping position for the cartel who were trying to chase them. When they get within range, Jim takes out the driver with one clean shot and causes the car to tumble with another. While Mauricio and the other two remaining men try to regain stamina from the crash, Jim retreats with Miguel into a nearby farmhouse. At the barn, he hides Miguel in a safe spot, instructing him to run away as fast as he can if anything happens to him. From the barn, he uses a shovel as a sniper stand and takes out one of the men with a clean shot through the window. Mauricio and the other man then start firing shots aimlessly at the building, so Jim comes up with another plan. Knowing that the men's attention is now drawn to the barn, he hands Miguel a pistol and instructs him to shoot out the same window at exactly 30 seconds, while he sneaks out to the backyard. When Miguel eventually shoots out the window, Mauricio's last man rushes out to try to trace the shot, but Jim, who had already been waiting in place, gives him a clean headshot. Meanwhile, Mauricio uses the opportunity to sneak into the barn. He finds Miguel and decides to use him as the perfect hostage. With Miguel as a hostage, Mauricio gets Jim to drop his weapon. Jim pleads that he let the boy go, but Mauricio states that he has other plans. He intends to groom Miguel to become a perfect cartel. Jim tells him to let the kid make his choice, and Mauricio gets upset as he yaps about how he never got the luxury of making a choice when he was also taken as a kid to a Diddy party. He decides that Miguel's first assignment will be to unalive Jim as he places a gun in his hand. Thanks to the training Miguel received, he disarms the gun just before Mauricio forces his hand on the trigger. Jim then takes the chance to attack Mauricio, and they both get into a scuffle for a moment. Despite Jim's old age, he holds his ground pretty well with the cartel boss and eventually overpowers him, trying to strangle him with some chains. Mauricio then pulls out a tiny dagger as a last resort and stabs Jim in the stomach with it. While he tries to finish him off, Miguel picks up the gun and reloads it, aiming it at Mauricio. Mauricio rage-bites him, asking to know if he truly has the guts to avenge his mother. And just as he's about to pull the trigger, Jim snatches the gun from him and shoots Mauricio. He doesn't want Miguel to know what it's like to take a human life. Not at his young age, at least. Jim then drops the pistol for Mauricio, who is now badly injured, but still alive, to make his choice while he leaves with Miguel. Shortly after they leave, Mauricio unalives himself. Luckily, they get a ride from a passerby who takes them directly to Chicago. Getting there, Jim takes Miguel to the address, And when the door is answered, Miguel meets his aunt, who welcomes him warmly. Jim, terribly injured, gets into a train heading back to Arizona after completing his deadly mission. The end. Thank you for sticking to the end of my video. Please do me the biggest favor by leaving a like, comment, and subscribe. And I hope to see you in the next video.